Innsbruck in Austria, the double Olympic city, is the venue for the sixth race of the BMW IBSF four-man Bobsleigh World Cup. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to what has been a snowy start to the day here high in the Austrian Tyrol as we get ready for two heats to decide our sixth race winner of the season. I'm Martin Haven, alongside me, delighted to welcome back Nathan Crumpton. Nathan, this Innsbruck track, so well known by everybody, but where are we going to see the problem areas today?
Problem areas are usually going to be down low, but the critical part is the start here. We see Team Melbardis with that start record, 4.93 seconds, almost 7 years to the day, actually, that it was set. Can't have a deficient start time here because it will multiply 1/10 at the top. It will multiply to 2 or 3 times down by the bottom. Here we see entering into curve 3, big sweeping left-hand corner. Can't drop out too early. Try and lay it straight into this upper labyrinth. The upper labyrinth will set you up into the Kreisel, curve 6. This is the critical setup corner for that Kreisel, where you come face to face with a 270-degree corner. You get slingshotted right out of there into this combination of 8 and 9. 9 is where we can see a lot of problems for a lot of these sleds. They can tap that left wall, get a little bit de-rezzed, and then you have to enter into curve 10, start to hit your top speed as you go into the lower labyrinth here. Try to avoid any rolling and scratching. All-out sensory assault as you enter this final Ziel curve. The finish curve here, and then the most dangerous part of the track, the finish, where you hope you stay off the wall and you're alive by the end of the run.
Yeah, that is not the easiest place. We've had several crashes in training, all of them after the finish line, and Nico Walter a little bit battered and bruised after his crash. Francesco Friedrich is our World Cup points leader. He's last year's race winner on this track in 2-man and 4-man, and if there was monobob racing, he'd have probably won that one as well. Nico Walter, his teammate, in 9th place. Hansi Lochner in 2nd. There is a pretty decent chance we could have a German sweep of the podium here. Now, that hasn't happened in 13 or 14 seasons, possibly even longer, but today it might do. There is Johannes Lochner, not racing in the 2-man race. His place has been taken by Richard Olsner, the junior world champion. Nico Walter raced yesterday in the 2-man, drove himself up into the top 6, starting at the tail of the field. Oskars Kiebermanis, injured, should be a threat here. He was the silver medalist here last year, but hasn't got a push start, and so that man in the multicolored hat, Francesco Friedrich, he is your nailed on favorite. What about Justin Kripso, winner of the season opening pair of races in Lake Placid? He's got a great chance here as well. Has a little bit underperformed so far in Europe, but the crew are determined to turn that around. Well, we've got 25 sleds in our start list this morning, 24 sleds in our start list this morning. Markus Treichel of Austria will be the first off. He's not healthy, nor is Dimitri Popov, nor is Benny Meyer. So there are a few broken and bruised bodies already. Oskars Kiebermanis also expect he might sit in at the start here, and Ryo Shinohara will be the last of our sleds to go. The fast 20 go through into the second and deciding heat. Race 6 of the BMW IBSF four-man World Cup. We're in Innsbruck in Austria. Local hero Markus Treichel with the most bizarre starting technique you will ever see. Traditionally, you will be pushing on the ice on the left-hand side of the sled, but it's left foot that is broken, so he just takes a bit of weight out of the sled to try and get the crew off to a decent start.
He does. I would call it the skateboard technique as he tries to push off, get that critical start. He is a hometown hero here, Austrian. He will know this track inside and out, so if anyone has good lines, I think this is a great sled to watch for it.
Well, this is a track that so many young sliders know because they bring them here, because it is easy to get down, it's not dangerous, but it is hard to get down fast because it's so well known.
Exactly, and it's also a track of subtleties too. You can't make any mistakes, otherwise your opponents are going to capitalize it. Here we see exiting curve 9, just taking a very light brush, keeps the runners straight though. Nice high line, beautiful height in 10 as he enters into the lower labyrinth here. Has some good speed on board. Beautiful looking lines, no complaints really from me. 51.73, setting the pace for this four-man bobsled race.
Well, they are going to be struggling to make the cut because of that deficient start. If you're not right on the money here, then you're just losing time all the way down the track. Treichel is racing here to try and make sure he gets as many points as he can.
Yes, indeed. Here we see the exit. No complaints from the lines anyway. It looks really solid. He's keeping the runner straight. Exit of curve 9. This is that little tricky spot where you can take that little tap. Maybe he just brushes it really lightly, but it's hardly even a touch.
Yeah, plus you got 300 odd kilos of beef inside the sled,
yes,
so
indeed.
that really just it just ignores those little brushes. There's Marcus Treichel, our first man down of 24. Will we see him in Heat 2? He's going to have to wait about an hour to find out. Next up, Russia's Dmitry Popov. Treichel was 8th last year, fully fit. Popov was tied for 15th place in this race last year. He's only had 2 Europa Cup races before this race last year. World Cup best for him came in St. Moritz last season, his rookie season on the World Cup trail, a 7th place finish. Alexei Zaitsev there, second right, with the big focus in the eyes of these guys. They know their driver is not fully fit. He's not going to be really pushing on the front handles, so the other 3 guys have to heft the sled off as quickly as they can.
A very ginger push, we can see it there. Team loads in, everyone gets down nice and quickly, push bars go in. You mentioned it, Martin, though, and that really is, it's the game of love and hate with bobsled, is that you're trying to go all out, but if you're not fit, if you have these injuries, it's really tough to overcome that.
But if you keep racing and scoring points, then you try and keep your place or a spot for your nation in the World Cup, and that's the critical thing. That's why injured athletes are still having to force their bodies through the ringer.
Exactly. You are trying to get those critical points. As we see him come through, the Kreisel took a nice high line above those blue luge lines. 0.08 of a second in the lead, entering the tricky curve 9. Shoots it straight as an arrow right down the pipe as he enters curve 10 and now into the lower labyrinth. Oh, bit of a movement on the runner tips there.
And he's not going to have the speed of Marcus Treichel at the bottom. He's lost the 1300s lead they had. So it's the battle of the halt and the lame. And actually, skater boy Marcus Treichel has a better run than Dmitry Popov. Neither driver fully fit. And they both are likely to struggle to make the race. You said it in the POV at the beginning, a 10th at the top is worth 3/10 at the bottom, even on a short track like this. So you're giving away much more than you seem to be at the start.
Yes, indeed. Here we see the replay of their start. Tucking in really nicely. It's a well choreographed push start. But they're just, they're lacking just a little bit of time.
And the brakeman, you can see, look at the shoulders there from Mikhail Mordasov. But again, Dmitry Popov just walking back fairly gingerly. He's going to need a couple of days before he can train again in Koenigsegg next week to recover. And unfortunately, racing every week now for the next 3 weeks, he's not getting much time. 4th World Cup start of Xiao Yijun's career, the 25-year-old Chinese driver. 16th in race 2 in Lake Placid. That's his World Cup best. They didn't race in La Plana last week. They were in Winterberg in Germany doing the National Games of China, which for Chinese athletes is at least as important as the Olympics. Comes around every 4 years.
We saw them exit with a 5:22 going down this track. That is the fastest start so far. So we'll see how it plays out. Opening it up to 0.13 of a second lead, taking that little tap there in the upper labyrinth, setting themselves up here for Kreisel. And another tap, just getting a little bit too much height in the middle of those corners. It crosses them a bit too strongly. Oh, and then going late into curve 8, just not quite the precision we've seen. And as a result, the lead is coming down.
Yeah, relatively limited experience here, certainly compared to Marcus Treichel, who literally grew up in this track because his parents helped run the facility. And Treichel and Benny Meyer definitely have huge knowledge here. And across the line in 3rd place, 51.84. Well, that for Treichel and for Dmitry Popov is good news because he's behind them. 4 sleds won't make the cut, and they go right through the station and out onto the rubber matting at the end. Lucky it is rubber matting and not bare concrete, but it still does not help the mirror finish on these runners.
No, they polish those runners as best as they can, and oh, you hate to see it go off, flying off the end. Here we see the replay going into curve 6, setting themselves up for Kreisel, and just a little bit too much height late there, pushes them across to slider's right side and brushing that wall. Not the ideal line. Comes out a little early with a little skid as well. That's these really tiny things, that's where the speed gets scrubbed away.
Trying to get that slingshot effect, use the height to build acceleration. But just hauled it down a fraction too early. So Xiao Yijun in third behind Dmitry Popov and Markus Treichel. Now here in his 58th World Cup start in four-man alone is last year's race winner Francesco Friedrich. Won the two-man race yesterday by 74 hundredths. The gap from second to third was 100th. That's how dominant he was. 9 four-man wins, 9 silver medals and 8 bronzes, and he's already had a bronze, a silver and 2 gold medals in 5 starts in the four-man this season alone.
I think this may be the first real contender for a medal that we see here today.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier, potentially that German sweep. We will be on the lookout for that too.
Well, 3 seasons ago, Oskars Melbardis beat Rico Peda and Stephen Holcomb. There was not a German sled on the podium. This year, I think that's unlikely to happen. Johannes Lochner won 2 years ago, winning the European Championship then. And Francesco won last season on this track. In fact, last year's race was 366 days ago, January 20th. We're January the 19th today.
Everyone down and in. Bell 5:03. Lightning start, 0.3 of a second. Faster than anyone else that we've seen so far. Team Friedrich here, ready to robot rocket down this track.
Well, they were so fast, he and Torsten Margis yesterday, winning their 6th straight two-man race together on this track. And Friedrich told me yesterday after the race, he said, I feel like this, of all tracks, is my home track. I've been here 14, 15 times. I don't think anybody can be as smooth as me at the top, and that's where you gain the speed.
And he's opening up a big lead here with some beautiful lines. Straight shot between 9 and 10.
Well, started 3 tenths quicker than Markus Treichel, so should be around 9 tenths ahead at the bottom, and he is looking like he's on target for that 81 hundredths. Well, the first heat yesterday, he was rocking and rolling a bit down the labyrinth. Race conditions very different from what they had in training. They haven't been on the ice until yesterday, since Thursday evening. And of course, bobsleigh training was later in the day. You know, we're in sort of middle of the day now, so the ice conditions different. It's much more humid because of the snow.
It is, and that may actually be some of the advantage for those early starters here, is that they'll get the slightly better ice, be a little bit faster, and improves their chances of making that second heat. Beautiful line going into curve 8 there. No skids, no taps. Here's the exit of 9, this little tricky part. He holds onto the corner a little bit long, but you can see him steering hard, takes it off, and shoots a beautiful straight line right into curve 10.
First 3 sleds in the heat are from drivers outside of the top 10 in World Cup rankings. So the best that you can hope to get if you're in the top 10 is 4th start draw. Francesco Friedrich got the 4th start draw. Next up is Michael Vogt of Switzerland, 22 years old. This is his 13th four-man World Cup. It's his 3rd season of driving. Cyril Bieri, who joins him on the back of this sled, he was a late substitute in the two-man sled yesterday for Sandro Michel and is in for Michel again this morning. So Sandro Michel was hoping to be fit, is not. Great to see Bieri back, and Michael Vogt driving up a storm. Race 1 in Lake Placid, his career high, a 7th place finish. He was 18th here last year.
Here we see them loading into the sled, very nicely choreographed, getting Dafton direct into the sled into curve 1, swinging around this omega curve. Curve 2 here, comes out a little early, but stays off of the wall. And then into this sweeping big curve 3, trying to keep it straight, drifting 400s back, probably due to the start deficit, but we'll see how much time they can claw back on the rest of this run.
Well, look at the speeds, 99.8 kilometers an hour to 100.3 of Francesco Friedrich. Friedrich is absolutely the gold standard here. Expect probably only Lochner or maybe Nico Walter to get close to him in terms of top speed.
It's a tidy looking run and still holding it now about half a second, hoping it doesn't drift away any further, hitting top speed just at 125.6 kilometers an hour.
Wow, that's really close to Friedrich, 125.7. So that's a Wolfgang, is that a Stanford sled? I'm not sure it is, actually. I was going to say it's a Wolfgang Stanford built sled. I'm not sure it is, but that was getting great numbers at the bottom. Francesco Friedrich in the new FES built four-man. It's the first time he's driven an FES four-man in his career.
Here we see the replay. It's smooth lines. It was just in that middle portion of the track, just down on speed compared to Friedrich. See, coming out of curve 9 here, just getting hung up a little bit on the end of that ice. Call it the fillet, the wipe, the funk. It goes by a lot of different names. Taking a little tap and then into curve 10 there.
So there, big smile from Mikkel Vogt, Cyril Bieri on the left-hand side. 5 sleds down. We've got 19 to go in the first heat of our 4-man bobsleigh World Cup here, Innsbruck in Austria. Martin Haven, Nathan Crumpton watching US slider Hunter Church, 6th of our starters, race 6 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup. And again, here in Innsbruck, in unknown territory, the young American, just 23 years old, in his first season in Europe. And boy, are these guys having fun.
They are indeed. This is the only American sled in the field today. A lot of pressure riding here on young Hunter Church. He enters curve 1 with 5:11 start time. Very respectable start time for him and for his crew.
Well, Coach Mike Kahn was saying exactly what we've noticed all season long about this crew, is they've come to Europe with no expectations, no prior conditions, and they are having fun with a capital F. And with that fun have come good results, has come confidence, has come speed at the start, and this is just growing with momentum. He is having so much fun and so many good results.
It is, and with Hunter as well, he considers himself a 4-man specialist. He prefers driving the 4-man sled over the 2-man sled. He feels at home in it, and he's getting some good speed out of the sled today here.
And look at this, only 1800s behind Francesco Friedrich. The gap to second was 4700s. It's now 1900s. That is a sensational run again from Hunter Church.
It is really coming around.
It cannot be understated how much confidence works in this sport. And this team, Mike Kahn was saying, is racing together probably as well as any team since Holcomb and the crew of the Night Train. They are having so much fun. And despite the fact that he prefers the 4-man, he's actually driving up a storm in 2-man as well.
Yes, he's having a fantastic season. Yeah. Hunter Church really is doing phenomenally well. He's got to be happy with this. Great push, too. Really synchronized. Everyone getting down, tucked away in their aero positions. And look at the eyes, laser focused on the track ahead.
And that sled is producing great speed numbers as well down at the bottom of the track. And don't forget, Francesco Friedrich says, this is my home track, I've been here so many times. Hunter's never been to Austria before. He's never been to this track before this week.
Hats up to him.
Again, you know, and this will be the case all season, apart from St. Moritz, where he did the Junior Worlds. And actually in St. Moritz, can't wait to see what he can produce. Next up is the bronze medalist from our race last year, the winner, 2 years ago here, where he took the European Championship. He won the European Championship in Winterberg a couple of weeks ago as well for this season. Francesco Friedrich's joint World Championship winning teammate, Johannes Lochner. They were tied in Koenigsegg for the gold medal back in 2017. And Hansi in his 30th 4-man start. 9 wins, 4 silver medals, 4 bronze medals in his career. So 30th start. In the previous 29, he's got 17 medals. He is not bad at all in a 4-man.
Suffice to say, and he's got the really cool blue visor going on.
Yeah, the chrome reflective visor, lots of people are using that just to cut the glare down from the ice track and from the, particularly on a cloudy day like today.
Powering off the block, expecting to see a strong start from the German team here. They usually have solid starts. Good synchronicity there.
I was going to say, anything sub 10 is right in the frame. 400s slower than Friedrich and his crew. That gives Hansi a great chance. Lochner in the 4-man Valner sled. He drove a Valner last year, as did Friedrich. This is a brand new version of the same sled, so even fewer creaks and groans.
Setting themselves up for Kreisel, drifting in a little bit early. 900ths of a second back.
100.1. Hunter Church is the quickest sled through all the speed traps, apart from the first one. So Hunter Church's sled actually quicker than that of Francesco Friedrich, the race leader.
That's quite the statement there.
102.3, that's quicker than Friedrich as well. Lochner is closing the gap, still in single digits at the line, 600s back. Oh boy.
We have a race.
Friedrich may not win by 3/4 of a second today. Fantastic stuff. Well, we talk about this track you know, where you have to basically split the atom to separate some of the sleds. Ties are not uncommon. Like I said yesterday, silver to bronze, 100th of a second. Could see that again today.
Yes, indeed, we could. The lines here from Lochner, not quite as clean. We see him actually exiting curve 9 here. Doesn't take it off quite as quickly, and so we see the tap.
But watch the runner tips. Doesn't
Dead
steer,
straight.
takes the tap,
Yep.
knows it's going to push him back onto the right where you want to be for turn 10. That's experience. And look
Big
at
height. Wow.
There's the slingshot effect. Hansi Lochner, just 600ths of a second off teammate Francesco Friedrich. Well, next up is Korea's Yoon Jung-won. The 34-year-old was 12th in this race last year. He tied for the Olympic silver medal in Pyeongchang, but in World Cup racing has never had a podium finish in 43 previous starts. His best ever, 5th place in Lake Placid, and that was back in 2016.
Korean team strong off the blocks. These guys, you see them in the weight room, they move weight really quickly. Still staying straight, a little bit late getting into the sled there. 5:18 though. Just a couple small problems with their synchronization.
It's such a short distance from when the grooves run out into turn 1, not like Winterberg or Koenigsee, so you've really got to get in, get down, and they just didn't.
You do, and you talk to some of these foremen, they say it's a bit like a ballet act almost, or almost going in through discourse, trying to get themselves into the sled.
Choreography on ice. Out of the Kreisel he comes, 100.0. That's very decent speed. But he's 4400s back.
It's that multiplier effect we see again. Still shooting it straight into curve 10. Exiting curve 10 down into this lower labyrinth, still hanging around that half-second mark behind the pace set by the German sled. Crossing the finish line into 4th.
Well, 4th place at the moment, but there are still a few potential upsets on the way. Hunter Church 3rd, Hansi Lochner 2nd, Francesco Friedrich 1st, and our joint Olympic silver medalist from Korea in 4th position. But a long way back, 4600s is not bridgeable to the leader.
This is that setup curve going into Kreisel, drifting just a little bit strongly, flirting with that wall, just manages to stay off of it. And then now the exit of curve 9, drifting in just a little bit late, but manages to stay off the wall, clean line into 10.
Yeah, look at the eyes again. Where the eyes go, the sled follows. So Yoon Jung-won is down. Now, what about Oskars Kibermanis, silver medalist last year? Is he going to be able to push the sled? I think he's probably going to try. Yesterday, he sat in the 2-man race, didn't make the cut, but gave some nice selfie shots on the way down as his brakeman, Martis Miknis, was trying to hoof it off the top on his own. And he is going to sit it again. So he really is not healthy at all, not even to run alongside it. So that means another 100 kilos added to the basic weight of the sled. They have to break that inertia with not 4, but 3 of them. So you've got 3/4 of the power plus another 25% of the weight.
Oh, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
They have got an uphill battle, and the push bar's still out. There he goes, sets it down.
So I'm not sure why it was out in the first place at all.
They didn't need it. No, exactly.
5:21, all right, you know.
Respectable.
We always talk about how strong the crew are.
Indeed, they are. The Latvians do have some of the strongest push athletes. They still hold the start record here at the Eagles track.
Yep.
4/10 of a second back now. We'll see what kind of speed he can muster. Maybe can generate some nice lines, nice driving, get good speed, and maybe make the finals.
You want to know how good that start was? They started 5:21. Yoon Jung-won, with 4 healthy men, just started 5:18.
5:18.
Uh-oh. And Mikkel Vogt started 5:22.
Testament to these Latvian athletes here.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, Kibermanis definitely can drive. 6th place at the moment, so he'll have Popov and Schau behind him, and Marcus Treichel, and maybe at the line Mikkel Vogt. No, just behind Mikkel Vogt by a couple of hundreds. That is a big drive, yes, absolutely. You saw his coach there, Sandis Prusis, who knows a thing or two about driving and winning medals in bobsleighs, and that was a brilliant drive from Oskars Kibermanis.
It absolutely was. Hat tip to them. Great beta wax for that. It's a beautiful run, especially when you're handicapped like that at the start. Going into this curve 9, the tricky corner that we've seen. Height late in the corner there, bringing the sled off. Great slow-mo shot coming out onto that straightaway. Just a small correction of the runners there and dead straight into 10.
Yeah, that's almost like he just let the sled take its head and soft hands to allow the runners to follow the direction the sled was going in. So great run from Oskars Kiebermanis. Top 6 despite having to sit in at the start. Well, the guys will be definitely earning their porridge this evening, won't they?
Yes, indeed.
Dominik Dvorak next up. 33rd World Cup four-man start for Dvorak, 26th as a driver. He started his career as a brakeman. He is a 10-7 100-meter sprinter. And this crew again, big, heavy, strong. They have got so much speed off the start.
We'll see what times they can muster here today.
Firing themselves up, Dominik Suchy, Jan Sindelar, Jakub Nosek. Nosek on the two-man sled with him yesterday.
You get that sense that it's almost like this gladiatorial arena there as they get started and they amp themselves up.
Absolutely. It's like a locker room before an NFL game. They're almost bouncing off the walls here. They're so pumped full of aggression. 5th place in last year's race remains his World Cup best four-man result. And he has a Valner four-man as well. And as Valner builds these sleds in a little two-door garage in his home in Austria.
Very popular
proper
sled, though.
cottage industry. They are so fast. He's a proper alchemist.
Doing something right.
Yep.
Here we go. What kind of start time can
Well,
this
again,
team
we need
get?
to be looking at low teens, maybe into single digits. 5:12.
5:12, solid, very solid. 4th fastest start that we've seen so far today.
Only giving away 900ths of a second to Francesco Friedrich. 900ths quicker than we've just seen from Oskars Kiebermanis' team. So where is he going to end up?
Drifting back, 1/4 of a second. That's the multiplier effect that we talked about earlier. Here we go, coming into Kreisel, the first big, difficult corner. Getting that slingshot effect out. Oh, maybe just a little bit of a skid there.
Yeah, didn't get 100 Ks in either. Only 101.7 on the way out. So he's just losing a little bit of speed compared to the German sled.
Drifting back to almost 4/10.
Hunter Church, 126 at the bottom. He's close, but it's 4th place, 51.34. All right, that's not too bad. 4th place for him. Yun Jong-won is 400s behind. Mikkel Vogt 500s behind. Oskars Kiebermanis 700s behind. 5 to 15 in this World Cup field, as in the two-man. That's where there are no gaps between any of the sleds.
Yes, indeed. Razor tight racing here. Seeing the replay of the load. 4 very large guys getting into this really tiny, almost tin can-like structure. As they load in, brakeman has to pop the little levers, get those push bars in.
You can see how tight the top of the cowl is. There's all these enormous shoulders barely squeezed into the sled at all. Well, next up, another of the Valner sleds. This is for Alexei Stolnev, his 38th World Cup race in four-man. Stolnev, 32 years old, the lead Russian driver now. World Cup best bronze medal in Koenigsegg back in 2017. His best this season came in Winterberg, race 2 of the double weekend there. A couple of weeks ago, he finished just off the podium in 4th place.
But a solid season so far for Stolnev. 5th ranked overall. He can't be too disappointed with that.
It does look like this season is going a lot better in 2 and 4 than last year did for him.
5:11 start.
Yeah.
Solid start for the crew there.
And that's all part of it. If you don't give your driver the start, then he's got one hand tied behind his back.
Exactly. That's why it's such a team sport. That's why you have to hit the sled at the same time. You have to have a great velocity. It really is a great coming together of a team into the sled.
3rd fastest start there in 4th place at the moment, around Dominik Dvorak territory. Hunter Church, the USA, still 3rd fastest, 101.6, that's good speed.
In the straightaway between 9 and 10, straight shots it, beautiful line. And then coming out of 10 into this lower labyrinth here, about 0.3 of a second behind. See what kind of top speed he can muster here. 124, does he get 125? Not quite.
Well, still 4th at line, 3700s back, just ahead of Dominik Dvorak by 500ths of a second.
Oh, can they stop?
And all 4 runners onto the ice. Now, the deal here is the runners are polished with really fine grade sandpaper until they are mirror smooth, because the smoother they are, the less all of that weight on them generates drag and friction on the ice, and friction is your enemy. If you gouge them up on some gritty rubber, and it will be very gritty, then all of that mirror shine goes and they start to grab the ice and slow you down.
They do. There'll be, hopefully they can fix it during the Parc Fermé, the time in between the heats, between 1 and 2. They should make the second heat no problem with a great run like that, sitting in 4th at the moment. But this is where the problem occurred. Just could not break it soon enough, flying off the end of the ice. And again, that rubber just accumulates all sorts of debris, and that's what can damage the runners.
So 10 sleds down, 11 sleds down. In fact, halfway through our field, Francesco Friedrich, the leader, from Johannes Lochner and Hunter Church. Next up, Nico Walter, 7th in the race here last year, 43rd World Cup race for this 4-man experiment. 7 wins, 7 silver, 6 bronze medal. His best here, though, bronze, 5 years ago.
And a 5:16 start, maybe a little bit off the pace from his compatriots. He may have his work cut out for him as he slides down this ice. I don't know if it will be enough for a medal as he drifts about a quarter of a second back.
Crashed here in training on Wednesday afternoon after the finish line in the tunnel, or in fact in the exit of the finish curve. 100.3, that's decent speed. Hunter Church 100.5. 4th place off the 6th fastest start. This is what Nico does now. He's been an FES man all his life, and in Winterberg, for the very first time, he is driving a different sled. He is in a Wolfgang Stanford-built sled, 4th at the line, 51.13. And did you see the way he took the Austrian shortcut very low around the final corner? Stop, 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 stop.
Ooh. Oh, guys.
And you can hear how furious they are. You've got to get on the brakes immediately across the finish line. Then you go uphill into a sharp right-hand corner. You can't brake there or you'll roll the sled. And then immediately onto the brakes afterwards. Now, looks like the Wallner brakes are struggling to dig into the ice here.
Here we see into that lower labyrinth, curve 13. Dropping just off of 13 and into, as you mentioned, trying to find that Austrian shortcut through the Ziel curve, the finish curve, curve 14, and you see the finish line right there. It's just after the corner.
And again, you see the flurry of ice. I mean, literally centimeters after the line.
It is.
Tobias Schneider was on the brakes, but they still shot off the end there. Now, those runners could be 10 grand's worth of steel. They may not be worth a lot. Justin Cripps of Canada, 33 years old, his 84th 4-man World Cup start. 6th in the race here last year. Cripps, though, was the silver medalist 2 seasons ago, so he knows how to get down this track, no question about it. Big day for the Cripps family as well. His grandfather celebrates his 100th birthday today. Looks like he's about 75, so Cripps, we know his parents very well and seen his granddad now, so we know he comes from a great gene pool. That's very encouraging indeed for him. So he's got the track being cleared in front of him. Ryan Summer, Ben Coakwell, Cam Stones, all waiting here. And Cripps had a great start to the season. Double 4-man races in Lake Placid. He won both of them. Came to Europe as the points leader, but he has slipped into 3rd place. Has not been on the podium since then, but has not been out of the top 6.
We've been noting some of the visors here. Cripps choosing to go with the night vision, totally dark visor. It's mostly a preference by the pilot. We'll see if he makes it work today. Off of the block. Oh, a little bit of a wobble coming out of the groove. 5:11 should put him in the hunt. 3rd fastest at the start. That should hopefully be enough that he can contend for a medal if he has a solid drive down the ice here.
Well, he was really looking forward to it after yesterday's 2-man race. So 3rd fastest, but they're out to 7th place already.
Just drifting away on this top half of the track and then drifting in a little bit early into Kreisel, just above those blue luge lines that we see painted on.
100.0, decent speed. He's brought it up to 6th position, but he's a 1/3 of a second back. 102.0, that's good.
Ooh, I don't know. Got a lot of height there in 10. See if he cleans it up. About 0.3 of a second back, entering this final corner here. Can he find that Austrian shortcut?
Still top 6 and at the line, fifth place, 3400s back. He started the same time as Alexei Stulnev, finishes 300s ahead of the Russian. So Krips in 5th, Stulnev in 6th. Okay, 51.26 the drive for Justin Krips. They all got in, got down neatly. The aerodynamic form is very good. This is a well-drilled crew.
Here we see just that little drift out of the start grooves. We haven't seen too many sleds do that so far, but they all get down. They're in, get those push bars in. There we see spring-loaded, gets them into that aerodynamic form. Just that little bit of a flop off of curve 5 as they go into curve 6 here. And then just a tiny little Tokyo drift to the left and to the right before the Kreisel.
So Krips with things to think about. Looking at another top 6 finish though, keeping his season on track. Francis Roman Heinrich, his 14th four-man World Cup as a driver, his 33rd overall because he started life as a brakeman. 19th in the race here last year, and that was better than he had done in 3 previous races here as a brakeman for France's former driver, Loic Kostag. Scored his World Cup best four-man result in Calgary last year at the end of the regular World Cup season with an 8th place.
See what kind of start time these French guys can muster here. Really putting everything they got into that sled. You can see it torquing to the left and to the right. 5:22, 12th fastest, a little bit off the pace from some of the fastest sleds that we've seen today. But they got almost a mile of ice, about 1,200 meters, quite a bit under a mile of ice. But we'll see what kind of speed they can generate as they drift about 1/2 of a second back here in the upper portions of the track.
Well, Marcus Treichel is in 11th, Oscar Kibermanis in 10th place after both having slower starts.
Just under the 100 kilometers an hour, entering Kreisel and 101.5 exiting.
Need 102 there, really. You've got to have triple digits going into the Kreisel. What's he got at the bottom? Can the French sled find a little bit more pace into the top 10 potentially at the line? He's flying now. Bottom part of the track is good, just out of the top 10 in 11th place. In fact, there's 0.3 to Oscar Kibermanis in 10th. He's 0.79 back, Kibermanis 0.49 back. So Kibermanis off a sitting in at start 5:21, driving 0.3 quicker down the track than Roman Heinrich.
Really impressive by that Latvian team.
Yeah.
So the French team can now look at their run. They can reassess during the break. They think, oh, I don't know, was it something about us? Was it something about the sled, perhaps? They do have a couple things that I suppose they can work on, as any athlete would think. You're always trying to improve. You're always wanting to try and get better. As we see the exit of Kreisel here, taking it out nice and neatly, and then staying off of that wall, and a good smooth line, actually, into curve 8.
Heinrich getting a little gingerly out of the sled. Not sure that he didn't hurt himself a bit getting in. Looked okay last night, despite the fact I nearly killed him, shaking hands with him after having a handful of peanuts. He's got a big nut allergy. Next up, Benny Meyer, 25-year-old Austrian, also injured. He's been on the bench since Lake Placid. Got a bronze medal in the season opener in the USA. Missed the last couple of European races. 34th World Cup start for him. So again, the boys trying to hoof it off the top. Can they get low 20s? 5:32.
He's really going to need that local knowledge here. See if he can find the optimal lines. But with such a talented crew between the Germans and the Latvians and everyone else, and Hunter Church, the American, he might have his work cut out for him here.
Benny Meyer made his four-man World Cup debut on January the 19th, 2014, 6 years ago today. Will he make the second heat this time as well?
Hangs on really late to the end of Kreisel, then gets in really early into curve 9.
Okay, here we go. This is a big drive from Benny Meyer. 14th at the start. This could be top 10 at the bottom of the track. 6,600s back. He's in 11th position. 10th place is Kibermanis, 11th Heinrich, and he's between the two of them. So that is a good drive from Benny Meyer.
Yep, taking out 4 people with one of the slower start times there. Big hat tip there for Benny Meyer.
Well, that means he's guaranteed to make the heat because only 4 get dropped, so he will be in the second heat. Wife Elizabeth is here with their brand new baby, Hendricks, who's just a few weeks old. There's Katie Bile, their teammate who raced in the women's race yesterday. Little skid.
Little skid, just scrubs a little bit of time there, and then going higher on that first pressure, the first oscillation there in Kreisel above the blue lines. And here we see the exit of 9, taking that little tap on both the front and the rear bunks, and then trying to straighten it out just to get into curve 10.
So little sticker on the front from Francesco Friedrich, who's helping out with the funding for Benny's racing this season. Friedrich's not just a great driver, he properly understands this sport. Francesco Friedrich, Johannes Lochner, Hunter Church, your top 3. 16th of 24 sleds on ice, race 6 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup. We are in Innsbruck in Austria. Martin Haven watching the action, and alongside me is Nathan Crumpton. And we are getting ready for the younger of our 2 Korean siders. This is Yoonjin Suk, 29 years old. This is his 18th World Cup start in 4-man, but his 11th where he sees where he's going as the driver after starting his career as a brakeman. So they fast-tracked him pretty quickly into the front seat to teach him how to drive. And his World Cup best, 10th place in our double race weekend in Winterberg just a couple of weeks ago.
I remember watching the sled in training earlier this week. Oh, and look at the steam coming off these guys. They really got warmed up for this. They're fired up and ready to go.
It was -1 and -2 out and quite humid. And these guys, as you say, thoroughly warmed up and stretched and steaming like racehorses. Here's a great view of how the team sets on the block, so they've got something to drive off. Driver on the front handle. Get in, get down.
Get down, and the push bars are in. 5:25 start time for this Korean squad. 14th fastest. I do have to say it is one of the best looking sleds. The gold and the blue really catches your eye.
Well, it looks as though Suk and Won have swapped sleds, because Suk normally drives the dark blue one and Won normally the white one. So clearly Yoon Jung Won's going, well, the kid's beating me, it must be his sled, or at least he's challenging me, it must be his sled. They're swapping the kit around. And this is the kind of thing that happens all the way through the season. You swap braking crews around, you move the positions in the sled to try and get everybody riding comfortably, to get the aerodynamics right.
Exactly. The other thing I did notice about the sled in training, though, it was really loud. Talking about the rattling and rolling there, I thought I was listening to WDPK 83.7 FM just on full volume there. It was really one of the loudest sleds in the field.
Well, one thing that you really get when you come to a bobsleigh track that you don't get so much off the TV is how these things thunder past you, particularly in these artificial tracks. The concrete channel shuddering really amplifies the noise of 600 pounds of sled, or 600 kilos nearly of sled, thundering by you.
Indeed. We see the exit here of Kreisel, and then exit of Kreisel that takes him into 8, just brushing that slider's right wall. And then the exit of 9, this one of the trickiest spots. Coming off the curve there, trying to stay off the slider's left wall. Just a gentle nudge there.
So there at the back is Yoonjin Suk, and he is currently lying in 12th compared to teammate Yoon Jung Won in 8th. There's Hannes Lochner. He is in 2nd place at the moment. Here's the big story from yesterday's race, apart from the shattering win for Francesco Friedrich. Brad Hall and Greg Cackett taking the silver medal, moving up instead of moving down from the bronze medal after the first heat. And we believe that is probably the best British 2-man race result since Nash and Dixon retired at the end of the 1965 season. Royal Marine Commando Taylor Lawrence and Parachute Regiment soldier Luke Dawes joined the two in this 4-man GB sled.
This is the first of 2 GB sleds in a row that we have today. 5:27 off the blocks, not quite getting into that top 10. Oh, and a little bit of a skid off of curve 2, and then a skid onto curve 3. That's not going to help their cause here. We'll see if they clean it up down the line.
This is definitely something we saw in the last few weeks from Brad Hall's sled, is that the rear is really loose. He's running very fat runners on the back, and that means that where the nose goes where he wants, but the tail tends to walk a little off the corners.
Right, that's the gamble that you take. You have the choice to choose what type of runner you put on there. And he takes that tap in a little skid again, just not quite enough grip, not the same grip in the same lines that we've seen from the other sleds. But if they are fatter runners, then they won't be scraping quite as much ice.
Absolutely, the friction will be reduced. And is this a top 10 run? 11th place, 51.59.
Solid, showing that he's driving better than his push, improve the spots even with the loose runs. Can you stop, guys? Oh no!
And they go off
to the rubber
matting
too
as well. That's not great news. Again, they will have been up till probably midnight, sanding those runners, polishing them to mirror perfection.
Oh, and then when you see that happen, your heart goes out to them, because that's a lot of work that you got to do to get them back up to that race finish. Popping into the sled here, getting those push bars in curve one, tucking down into their aerodynamic position, and then making their way down the ice.
That's Greg Cackett at the bottom. Bumped his coccyx yesterday in the first run, and then bumped it again jumping in the second, so he's not feeling comfortable in the sled, I bet.
There we see the replay of those skids just at the top of the track, out of 2 and into 3, which also just hurts the velocity a little bit. But with those fatter runners, maybe they didn't hurt him as much, because he was able to drive himself into a decent position.
Well, next up is our second British sled, Lamin Dean. Didn't get to race yesterday. The runners that he had borrowed from a top team turned out to be too fat to be legal. 47th World Cup start in 4-man for the Grenadier Guardsmen. Grenadier Guardsmen as Robin Dixon, the 64 Olympic gold medalist with Tony Nash on this track, was. And in they get Ollie Butterworth from the Parachute Regiment, Ben Simons, and Toby Alubi, who have arrived to boost the team this week.
They were a little slow getting into that sled and down in for curve 1, but they all settled in just fine, didn't have any issues at the top. About 0.3 of a second behind as they navigate their way through this upper labyrinth, and now going into the Kreisel, that big 270-degree corner.
Nice looking lines. 9th fastest at the start, and he is driving up a storm up to 8th place, Lamin Dean.
Oh, the Brits may have their sled set up right today. A little bit of a skid, trying to just flick the top of the runners just to get them straight.
101.8, that's good speed. Needs 125 at the bottom to be in the top 10. It's a top 10 run at the moment. Is he going to be ahead of Oscar's keeper Manis? No, behind him by 0.04 of a second. That's a good run from Lamin Dean. Big Toby Alubi on the brakes there, hauling on the anchors.
Getting it to stop just in time.
Yeah.
Saving those runners.
51.45 and a top 10 finish 400s away. That's a good run from Lamin Dean. Very disappointed after yesterday.
Yes, indeed. Flynn lives one more time as we see the exit of curve 9 here, taking it off the corner. You can see this, look at the runner tips there. You can see the ice just bouncing off of it. Stays off the wall, but does break into a tiny bit of a little skid and then gets on really early into corner 10.
Well, good morning to Lake Placid and to John Morgan. John pointing out that the sleds currently are going 1/1500ths faster than the 76 Olympic Games starts, but 4.5 seconds shorter on ice before they get to the finish line. So, oh boy, has the technology changed since 1976. Well, the sleds are fully faired as opposed to just having a little half cowling, so the technology definitely coming along. Well, next up is our second Latvian slider. This is Ralf Berčins, 22 years old, 8th equal in the race here last year, his first in the World Cup in Innsbruck. His best this season, 13th place last week in La Plana. And so far, his race last year in Innsbruck is his career high in 4-man. So in his 8th World Cup start, started in 2 and 4-man at the beginning of last year. And we end our regular season at his home track at Sigulda, and as last year, that will be a double 2-man weekend.
Yes, that Sigulda track just not quite able to fit the 4-man sleds down from the top, so that's why they do the 2-man there, and why they had the double 4-man in Winterberg earlier this season.
So we've just seen Oskars Kubermanis sitting in, and the crew pushed him to a 5:21, so this should be barely into double figures. Oh, little skid. 5:14, another big getaway.
Totally respectable start there by the fast Latvian crew, getting into that top 10, and then making their way into the big sweeping left-hand corner. Multi-pressure corner, but not a lot of speed to really stick you onto the corner itself. Here into the upper labyrinth, about 0.3 of a second back into corner 6. What kind of line does he take out? Oh, drifting in a little bit early into Kreisel. Staying just above those blue luge lines and nice and clean down into 8 and into 9, about 0.5 second back. The speed's a little bit down though, and a little bit of a drift. Maybe too much control there.
Kilometre an hour or 2 adrift at the bottom of the track. Top speed still from Hunter Church, 1:26.0, and at the bottom, does he even get to 1:25? No, not enough, 51.69. And that's the opposite side of the coin to what we saw from teammate Oskars Melbardis. 7th fastest start, 15th at the bottom of the track.
Yes, indeed. He just finds himself in the outlands there, just not quite where he wanted to be. See the replay of the start here. What was the issue? Everyone's getting in, getting down.
Yeah, just rocking and rolling a bit as they
drifting.
settle.
Yeah, it just drifts to the slider's right side as they enter into curve 1 there.
You just saw a twitch of the runners as he actually got hold of the D-rings. And here again, little long drift with all that weight behind the axle. Tend to slide around a lot, these sleds, if you let them.
You do. You can see the articulation of the sled, the front half of it, just as it whips up onto that corner there. But a nice clean exit out of Kreisel.
So Ralf Bertjens, only in his 2nd year in World Cup, his 3rd year driving. He did 1 season prior to coming to World Cup, former luge slider. Timo Rohner did not make the cut yesterday in the 2-man race. Let's see if he can do a little better in the 4-man. British bronze medalist from the Sochi Games. Belatedly, Joel Fearon joins the crew here.
What kind of speed can the Swiss sled generate today? Joel Fearon, very fast 100-meter runner. We'll see what kind of velocity he gives it. 5:22, 14th fastest, not quite cracking into that top 10. But we'll see what they can make. Oh, and just a little bit of a drift and getting that front right runner onto the side of the ice there as they exit curve 3 and drifting back to about 0.4 of a second deficit.
He's out driving his start already, 14th of the start up to 11th place, but a long skid off 6 down into the Kreisel isn't going to help.
Maybe he's also running some really fat and aggressive runners, so he's not going to scrub too much time if he does skid. Takes that very light little tap, not scrubbing too much energy there. Spits himself out of curve 10 into the lower labyrinth, about 2/3 of a second back into this finish curve here. Where will he end up?
Well, top 15 guarantees himself a second heat, so he's in 200s ahead of Ralf Bertjens, who just came down before him. The youngsters, both 22 years old, separated by 200s of a second, and in fact, Rohner is tied to the 100th with Yunjin Suk. So we've talked about how close the races are. That is our first actual tie in the heat.
See the replay exiting curve 2 and then now into the upper labyrinth here. Just a little bit of a strong cross, that rear right bunk just taking a light little tap and then setting themselves up into curve 6 here. This is the setup curve to the Kreisel. A little bit of a Tokyo drift there before Kreisel, but not terrible.
There's Joel Fearon on the left-hand side, and you can see waving at the back of the sled, or the far end of the sled, the front end, Timo Rohner. So Francesco Friedrich, Johannes Lochner and Hunter Church, your top 3. Nico Volter, 200s out of the medals in 4th. Justin Cripps in 5th position. And look how tight that field is. 20 sleds down of 24, race 6 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup, and the final 4 sleds have to bump somebody else out to make the second heat. Martin Haven, and alongside me are US and now American Samoa slider Nathan Crumpton. And that's the challenge for this young man. In 2012, Patrick Baumgartner won the Youth Olympic gold medal in boys bobsleigh on this track, so he knows what he's doing. Question is, can he get into the race?
And with a 5:22 start, he puts himself in the ball game. He's in the top 20 at the start. We'll see if he's top 20 at the finish and if he can bump out the Chinese sled.
four-man champion in Europa Cup sliding last year, so he was here in January 2019 as part of that campaign. He's got good recent knowledge, and he's in the teens at the moment.
And that's the job of the pilot. You really have to be the recognizer and rectifier of all your mistakes that you do. You have to be so self-aware as you make your way down the ice, just tapping into that slider's left wall in the straightaway. Now down into the lower labyrinth out of 10 through 11. 2/3 of a second back, top speed 124, squeeze maybe a little bit more out of it, and
14th place to the line. He was up to 12th place, challenging Brad Hall, slips back a fraction. He's 100th ahead of the tie between Suk and Rona, and that bumps out Xiao Yijun of China. On the bubble now in 20th place, Dmitry Popov. So using his knowledge, using his experience, Patrick Baumgartner, and he will make the cut.
Smooth entry into 9 there. A lot of height, getting really good heights, and then takes it out. Just hanging on, just a little bit of late height there at the end of corner 9. Takes that light little tap, and then a tiny little drift, but nothing catastrophic.
World Cup best so far, 15th in St. Moritz in four-man. He currently lies 14th. Could be on a career high here. 3 sleds to go. Next up, Ivo de Bruin of the Netherlands now. Ivo finished in a 15th place tie last season. So there's every reason to expect that he will make it into the race. And ironically, should he do so, the man with whom he tied last year for 15th, Dmitry Popov, will be the man that he bumps out. Got a brand new Eurotech sled, and they are working hard on the tech there with Eurotech boss Vim, Tom Delahunty there at the back.
Some of the tallest guys you'll see on the bobsled squad. Some of the only guys who can match you for height here, Martin. Ivo focused on the race ahead.
Yep. And again, he has got plenty of knowledge of this track. Absolutely no reason why he should be worried about making the cut.
Let's go! Come on, boys!
Powering off this Eurotech sled from the start. Ivo hopping in. Crew nicely choreographed. And a dead shot into curve 1 with a 5:29 start. That puts him right at 20th. They're right on the bubble. So if Ivo wants a chance at the final, he's going to have to drive himself into position and give himself a cushion ahead of the other sleds to guarantee a spot. About half a second back. We'll see what work he can do down the ice.
Yeah. Needs to get nice speed as he comes down into the Kreisel and use that corkscrew spiral to really launch him into the bottom half of the track.
0.6 of a second down, 101.6 speed.
Yeah, decent speed. Top speed there, 102.4 of Hunter Church. We've seen lots in the 101s at the moment. He's in the race, up to 18th. It's going to be close at the line. It's him or Dmitry Popov at the line. He's in and Popov is out.
Just sneaks himself in there in 19th position.
Yeah. Sucking the bear through the teeth from Tom Delahunty. That was close. It was a little closer maybe than they would have liked, but he is in at the moment with just 2 sleds to go. And he has got the safety net behind him of Marcus Treichel.
Here we see a little bit of a drift and then a tap as well, sort of the front bunk, rear bunk tap. And then the exit of Kreisel. Hanging on to the corner, those right runners just staying on, and then makes him flirt with that right wall, and then a little skid nose down going into curve 8.
Yeah, sled getting backed in there, and those runners sideways, despite the fact that they're so polished and rounded, still carving the ice. So Ivo's in at the moment, and 2 sleds to go. First of whom is Jin Jian, our 4-man champion from the National Games of China. Won that title slightly surprisingly, outracing Xiao Yijun to the gold medal. As I said earlier, Pierre Luders was telling us they had these races in Winterberg last year. The National Games of China every 4 years. And it is at least as important for Chinese athletes as Olympic Games, and particularly for their regions that they come from that produce a lot of the funding. It's a huge deal for Yin Jian.
Chinese team really working hard. They've got some great mentors on their squad with some of the Germans, and tucking in very nicely, pretty well synchronized.
5:20, now that won't have hurt him at all in Winterberg. That's a big start. 3rd ever World Cup start for Jin.
11th fastest at the start. That gives him a shot. It'll put him in the runnings to see if he can make this final heat.
Raced here in the Europa Cup races in January 2019. So again, he knows the track, at least passingly.
Yes, it won't be his first time racing here. Enters into the Kreisel 99.2 kilometers an hour. Oh, hangs on a little bit late there.
Brought it down
8.
very early.
And then the speed's just a little bit down, takes a bump and a big long skid going into curve 10.
Could be in trouble here. 11th fastest start, but he might struggle to make the race. Teammate Xiao Yijun is already out. Dmitry Popov is out. It's Jin or Treichel, and Treichel is out. And there's Pierre Luders, 51.68. Well, that was a sort of
bit of a scowl,
halfway to being congratulatory. He got into the race, but yeah, Luders is looking at that very early exit, very abrupt exit off the Kreisel, going, okay, well, that's where you gave half a dozen places away.
Yeah, not ideal. Here we see the replay of Kreisel just sweeping through the corner, the big left-hander, hanging on just above those luge lines, coming out a little early, but then, yeah, just hangs on just a little bit long.
Too much pressure still, and it pushed him back out to the wall.
Yeah, they're into 8. Cleanly into 8, though, to their credit.
Crossover nicely, and they avoided going over onto the rubber as well. So Jin Jan there at the front of the sled. He is in 17th place at the moment. Ivo de Bruin now has to wait a minute to find out whether he is going to be in the second heat or whether it will be Ryo Shinohara, the Japanese driver, in his 4th World Cup start. 19th place in La Plana last week. He too raced in Europa Cup last season, so he was here last January.
And that familiarity really helps. Even though they do have a new track crew, it is worth mentioning that.
Yep.
And the ice profiles are a bit different this year. Whoa! Just Japanese team very appropriately Tokyo drifting it into curve 1. You don't want to see that though, because that's not how you go fast. You want to try and keep those runners as straight as possible. Oh man, we'll see what kind of speed they can muster as they're already 2/3 of a second back.
And that was the sled being moved around by the crew, rocking and rolling as they were getting in. You've got to drop in with cat-like movements. You can't upset the sled because the driver has no control at that point.
Exactly. You have to do more with less sometimes. 99.5 speed is down as well. This is a run that I think the Japanese team is going to want to have back.
Well, 20th fastest through the speed trap, but they are going to be last at the line. 24th place beckons, and that's where Ryo Shinohara ends his day. So, unfortunate load for the Japanese. Peter Hintz, the coach there, with a little shrug. I mean, these guys are all showered in ice crystals there. Look how the sled fills up. Yes. The brakes dig in, and there's a hole in the floor where the brakes go through. And yeah.
It's a good 5-10 kilos of ice probably right there.
Yeah.
Here we see the load, and the team just isn't settled. The driver recognizes it. The driver cranks on those D-rings, tries to straighten it out, but the crew is just not settled, and so the sled just goes sideways, takes a little tap, and then drifting all the way through corner 1, and nocturne and good night for the Japanese team, unfortunately.
Now, take a look at the underside of the sled. What of our... you can see the teeth of the brake there bouncing around. The brake handles are held to the floor by a bungee strap, so you can pull against them, and it's...
But those bungees should be tight, though. They should not be bouncing up and down like that.
Well, luckily they didn't dig into the ice there. Otherwise, that would have been instant disqualification.
Yes.
First heat of 2 done. Race 6 of 8 of the BMW IBSF 4-man bobsleigh World Cup. Last year's race winner, Francesco Friedrich, has the lead, but only by a slender margin. The winner 2 years ago, Johannes Lochner, is 600s back in second place, and a titanic battle for bronze between Hunter Church and Nico Walter. Can the young American A, take his first European 4-man medal, and B, stop the German clean sweep? We have not had one since before at least 2006. So in our last 12 seasons, the Germans have not swept the podium. Well, Francesco Friedrich lost the race here in the World Championships to Oskars Melbardis. Couldn't catch the Latvian in the final of 4 heats, but he won last year's race, his first 4-man victory on this track. It looks as though he may be well poised today, but it is going to be a big battle between the last 2 winners. Sledge will be back on ice at 1500 local, 1400 GMT. I believe that translates as something ridiculous like 0800 Eastern. Wherever it is, join Nathan Crumpton and me, Martin Haven, and the IBSF TV crew for our final run of the weekend here in Innsbruck. We'll see you then. I'll be the same for now.